Good evening, you're watching News Mongolian Beyond. I'm your host, Anarkan Batar. And for top stories, Socio-Economic Impact of Global Crisis in Mongolia workshop held on Monday. New York Times bestselling author Jack Weatherford is visiting Mongolia, and Young Spice Competition 2023 was successfully organized for the third time in Mongolia. And for the news, stay tuned. The UN Coordinator's Office, UNDP, UNFPA and other UN system organizations in Mongolia organized a workshop on the socio-economic impact of global crisis in Mongolia. The workshop was organized on Monday at Novotel Hotel.
Emerging global economic issues such as global shocks to commodity prices, food and energy supply, and financial markets were the main topics discussed during Monday's workshop. Opening the workshop, the UN Resident Coordinator in Mongolia, the Deputy Minister for Economy and Development, and the UNDP Mongolia Resident Representative delivered speeches.
As you're all aware, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the protracted influence of the challenges of COVID-19 have short-term and longer-term impacts on Mongolia's economy. Mongolia is bearing the cascading impact of the economic sanctions on Russia, as well as the impacts of the COVID-19 related border closures with China, which have significant impact on the value chains in all sectors. And in this connection, the United Nations and Mongolia has developed this joint project on rapid analysis and response to the impact of Russia-Ukraine conflict and the COVID-19 pandemic on Mongolia's economy and especially the vulnerable population. One of the key activities of this project is the in-depth analysis on impact of Russia-Ukraine conflict and COVID-19 pandemic. Number one, to identify key areas and sectors that the UN country team in Mongolia should prioritize for further strengthening the implementation areas of its United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2023 to 2027 and look at its implementation as we are working on our joint work plans in moving the needle forward on inclusive and sustainable development.
Lately, the political uncertainty and the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic are causing challenges regarding the health and economic situation of our citizens. Before the pandemic, the economic growth of Mongolia in the period of 2017-2019 was around 5 to 7%, while in 2020 the economy of Mongolia actually shrank by 4.6%. In this regard, the government has taken several measures, and in the third quarter of 2022, the economy again showed 3.7% growth. However, due to the war in Ukraine and the lingering after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the local economy is still facing some uncertain risks.
As has been mentioned and you're aware, the global economy is slowing down and global shocks are affecting commodity prices, food, energy, and financial markets, which are also making Mongolians, and particularly those who are most vulnerable, affected at a time when the country is also engaging on mobilizing its new economic recovery policy. If we do not work together to address this economic downturn, it will pose further risks for the vulnerable population in Mongolia in terms of food security, health, well-being, as well as pose risks for the business community and also have effects on maintaining sustainable and affordable energy in Mongolia. Thus, UNDP is pleased to have initiated and be implementing the rapid analysis and response of the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and looking also at the added continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Mongolia's economy and also vulnerable population in the country.
The workshop was divided into three parts: the socio-economic impacts on livelihood and businesses and on the food and energy sectors. Speakers from the UN, the National University of Mongolia, and Nomadic New Energy presented reports during the workshop. Important points of discussion included the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, the decline of the Mongolian tugrix against the strong US dollar, and possible solutions. Compared to September 2021, inflation rose by 16% in 2022, impacting people differently depending on their purchasing power. The 16% inflation rate feels like 12.9% for people with higher income, while people with lower income feel inflation at 18%. Inflation has had a bigger impact on people with 3 or more children and people living with disabilities, while herders in rural areas felt less of an inflation burden. Household consumption habits have changed due to inflation. Household purchasing power has decreased and consumers are purchasing less expensive food products. A study on the impacts of COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine shows that herders have felt the impact of rising fuel costs. Meanwhile, entrepreneurs have faced challenges related to purchasing materials and inventory from foreign suppliers.
The New York Times bestselling author Jack Weatherford is visiting Mongolia at the invitation of the President of Mongolia, Kosovo, on the occasion of the Mongolian Pride Day.
Jack Weatherford is the New York Times bestselling author of Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, Indian Givers, How the Indians of the Americas Transformed the World, The Secret History of the Mongol Queens, and The History of Money, among other acclaimed books. A specialist in tribal people, he was a professor of anthropology at Macalester College in Minnesota for many years, and now divides his time between the United States and Mongolia. Weatherford explores Genghis Khan's legacy and influence. He attributes many aspects of the Renaissance to the influence of trade enabled by Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire, such as the spread of paper and printing, the compass, gunpowder, and musical instruments such as the violin. Weatherford suggests that the European Renaissance was a rebirth not of Greece or Rome, but of concepts from the Mongol Empire. Weatherford argues that the Mongol Empire was the impetus for the European Age of Discovery. 2 centuries later, Europeans were trying to reclaim the lucrative global trade that was lost when the Mongol Empire collapsed. Jack Weatherford says that he returns to Mongolia like it's his hometown, and he's been visiting every year for the last 25 years. This year, the 860th anniversary of the birth of the great Emperor Genghis Khan, celebrated as Mongolian Pride Day, is being observed on November 24th.
The Young Spikes Competition 2023 is part of the Spikes Asia Festival of Creativity, which is the largest festival in the creative industry of Asia-Pacific countries, was officially organized by the Mongolian Marketing Association for the 3rd time in Mongolia. First place was won by the team of the Brand On Agency and will represent Mongolia in Singapore. The competition brings together the best companies, marketing agencies and startups in the creative and marketing industry, discusses trends in the industry, shares experiences and selects the best creative industry winners of the year. A 2-person team completes a comprehensive marketing campaign plan within 48 hours based on the theme provided by the organizer and sponsor. It includes creative ideas, strategic planning, media channel planning and a calendar plan for implementation.
Young Spikes competition is part of Spikes Asia Creative Festival. It's locally organized in 2019. So Mongolian Marketing Association is an official representative, and we are organizing in an international format. And for this year, there are 17 teams competing. Yeah, in our first year, in 2019, Mongolian team competed to the internationally. Then they won the gold medal. The competitors was a really tough, like the Dentsu agency from Japan, they got the 3rd place, and DDB agency from China, they got the 2nd place, and amazingly, Mongolia got a gold medal in a very special case called Superhero.
Really glad to see that young marketers and young PR branding agency specialists are participating on this event, and I see very creative young folks doing amazing job in few hours or 2 days. So yeah, the results are great.
This competition gives talented and creative young people under the age of 30 an opportunity to challenge themselves, and the national winner will represent Mongolia at the Young Spikes competition held in Singapore. Competing with the best young people from the Asia-Pacific region, it is highly significant as it provides an opportunity to promote oneself and the country in the creative field. This year, the competition was held from November 18th through 20th, 2022. More than 20 teams submitted applications for this competition, and 17 teams that registered for the first time took part in the competition, and the winner was announced on November 20th.
Well, it was amazing. It's 2 days straight. I got exhausted personally, but overall competition was amazing. I love it. Well, the competition was so intense. Like everyone was so close to each other's level. I think everyone did great on this competition. I love it. Well, we focused on the problem where parents don't know about the assaults that their children got encountered on Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth. So we want to solve this issue with the parental monitoring systems that many developed countries have. So we want to localize this system into our Mongolian family cultures and soils, and that's it.
Each year at around the same time, the competing teams are presented with the theme of the competition on that day, and this year's theme was the culture of communication in the social media environment. The first place was won by the team Brandon Agency with members Tolga and Softirtang. The second place was won by the Creative Juice team with members Tufshintur and Anand. The third place was secured by the Mind Plus company's Italian team Kanchutur and Tingis. Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the international news from our partner agencies. The European Union's top diplomat was holding talks Monday with Serbia and Kosovo leaders in Brussels in a bid to defuse tensions between the Balkan neighbors amidst the dispute over vehicle license plates.
The European Union's High Representative Joseph Borrell had separate talks planned with Serbia President Aleksandar Vučić and Albin Kurti, the Prime Minister of Kosovo, before joint meeting later in the day. The European Union said the focus of the emergency meeting will be on finding a way out of the current crisis and avoiding any further escalation and tensions on the ground, with an emphasis on license plates and the return of Kosovo Serbs to Kosovo institutions. The EU warned Serbia and Kosovo last week that they are on the edge of a precipice and must resolve their disputes or face the prospect of return to their violent past. Long simmering tensions between Serbia and its former province mounted in recent weeks over the Kosovo government's decision to ban Serbia-issued license plate. On November 5th and 10th, Serb lawmakers, 10 prosecutors, and 576 police officers in Kosovo's northern Mitrovica region resigned over the move. Under the ban, about 6,300 ethnic Serbs owning cars with number plates deemed to be illegal in Kosovo were to be warned until Monday's deadline, then fined for the following 2 months. From April 21, they would only be permitted to drive with temporary local plates. The issue of Kosovo's independence sparked the 1998-1999 war in which about 13,000 people died. Serbia launched a brutal crackdown to curb a separatist rebellion by the territory's ethnic Albanians. NATO bombed Serbia in 1999 to end the war. Kosovo unilaterally broke away from Serbia in 2008. The Serbian government, with support from China and Russia, has refused to acknowledge Kosovo's statehood. The United States and most of its European allies recognize Kosovo as an independent country.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. There was frustration for the United States men's national team in its opening game of Qatar 2022 as Gareth Bale scored a late penalty for Wales. The US men's national team was dominant for much of the match, but as so often been the case, it was LAFC star Bale who dug Wales out of a sticky situation as this Group B game ended 1-1. The 22-year-old Timothy Wee, son of soccer great George Wee, had put the US ahead in the first half with a fine finish, but this young US side, with an average age of 25 years and 175 days, was unable to maintain its dominance and allowed Wales to snatch a draw. There was no shortage of American fans inside the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium on Monday, and they made their voices heard, exchanging songs with the Welsh contingent behind the opposite goal. The familiar USA chants reverberated around the venue on what was welcome cool night in Doha. For much of the match, it looked as though those fans would be celebrating a much-deserved win. But just as all hope looked to have disappeared for Wales, Bale was clumsily brought down by Walker Zimmerman in the US box. There was then no doubt as Bale stepped up to fire his spot kick in the top corner of the net.
Yeah, it was a good game. Second half was better for the Welsh team. We scored the goal. Gareth Bale scored a penalty, so we're happy with that. 1 point against USA. They're a formidable team, so I think we did quite well. Happy with the result.
It sent the Welsh fans behind the goal into a frenzy, and it was Bale's name being sung the loudest at the final whistle. The captains of several European teams will not wear One Love armbands at the World Cup in Qatar due to the danger of receiving yellow cards. England, the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland and Wales were set to participate in the One Love campaign to promote inclusion and oppose discrimination. Both those countries' associations said in a statement on Monday that the armband, which features a striped heart in the different colors to represent all heritages, backgrounds, genders and sexual identities, would not be worn in Qatar.
So first of all, I think it's not up to the players. This is not a player's decision. Imagine going on the pitch with a clear yellow card to start with. That is not possible, and we have to make sure that it's not up to the players to make that decision. We've played with this armband before. That means under UEFA. And we'll see. I think there will be decision taking for all the countries that said that they will play with it. Let's see later today what happens. But of course, sports sanctions, not only economical sanctions, but also sanction that leads to something that has to do with sports, the results, yellow card. We cannot ask the players to go on the pitch with that, and I don't think it's a player's decision. I think it's our federation. It's our decision.
The decision not to showcase the armband in Qatar came hours before England's opening game against Iran and the Netherlands' game against Senegal later on Monday. The country said they were frustrated by what they described as FIFA's unprecedented decision to sanction the captains should they wear the armband. Here's the weather forecast of all major cities. Well, that's all for today, and thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.